This is Jennifer with iCadenza, and I'm here with Edna Landau, who has had the most legendary career as an artist manager and who is now the Director of Career Development at the Colburn School in Los Angeles. So thank you so much for being here with me today.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you.
So tell me, how did you get started in management? You had such an amazing journey from starting your own company and then working with IMG. What was that like for you, and how did you first decide you wanted to be a manager?
You have an hour? Like many things in my life, it's something that happened almost without a plan. I was teaching at the High School of Music and Art in Manhattan for about 5 years, and I decided, as wonderful as teaching was, that I wanted to be around performing artists more. And so I started looking at the ads in the New York Times, and one day there was an ad from Young Concert Artists that this is a nonprofit artist management agency that helps artists get their first chances in their careers. And I didn't even really know what Young Concert Artists was at the time, but it was a clerical job, really, assistant to the director, to Susan Wadsworth, and I decided to apply for that job. They wanted someone full-time, I wanted to work part-time, so it was not a natural match. I had a very young child at the time, but I called them up and managed to explain what I wanted to do and managed to get hung up on. And then I started crying, and then I called my husband, who said, "Go down there and tell them that you really want this job," which is exactly what I did. And they didn't know what to do with me, but I showed up and got myself a dictation test, and I did some typing for them, and I walked out and I called my husband and I said, "Well, I defended my honor and I did what you told me to do. Can I now go shopping?" And he said yes, and I came home and the babysitter said, "Young Concert Artists called and they want you to start on Monday."
Wow.
So that was the beginning of my work in the artist management arena. I wasn't really an artist manager. I was an assistant to Susan Wadsworth, but I learned everything about the business in those first 5 years, even though it was a nonprofit setting. And after about 5 years, I had an absolute hankering to book concerts for the artists, but that was not my responsibility, and there was no opening there. So I started looking around to see if I could work somewhere else and do that. And I met Charles Hamlin, who had started his own agency a year earlier, and he managed to work things out at a very low salary, I will add, for us to work together, and that was the beginning of my work as an artist manager. So, I don't think I could have predicted it, and I didn't know that there was such a thing as arts administration or artist management, but there I was.
Now, you have so many stories from your career of having to be so bold and gutsy to do something for an artist and, for yourself to move forward. How do you find that drive within yourself, and how can you, I'm sure you use that to inspire the students you work with as well.
I think you're either born with it or you're not. I never thought about it. I think that I love having fun. I love working with people. I love music. This just seemed to be a very natural development for me to go down this path. And the more the challenges were, the more I seemed determined to overcome them. Thank God I was, born healthy with a lot of energy, not a great need to sleep. So, and a good work ethic that I inherited from my parents. So I guess it all came together.
What about music inspires you, and what made you realize that you wanted to spend your life surrounded by artists and by music?
Well, there you have the same situation again. I was born into a family where my father was a professional dentist, but in all of his spare time he listened to music at home, and he actually became one of the great Mozart scholars of our time by collecting manuscripts and just doing an enormous amount of musicological research in his spare time. But I think that I took piano lessons and I was in a musical household. But when I went to college, I had no idea what I was going to do. And I was required to take the basic music course. And my teacher said to me one day, "Have you ever thought about majoring in music? You have perfect pitch and you seem so interested and excited about everything we do in this course." And I thought, music major, well, maybe. I figured I was going to be a teacher. So I thought, okay, I'll major in music and I'll minor in education. And that's really how it started. And then the more I went to concerts, the more I just got bitten by the bug and thought, I want to know these people, I want to help these people. So that was the connection.
Mm-hmm. As a manager, when listening to concerts and to artists perform, you really have to be able to pick up on the nuances and to hear if this is a great performance or not so great. What helps you make those decisions, and how do you tell if an artist has that potential?
Well, if you're thinking about what you are going to buy for dinner tomorrow night while you're sitting in a concert, then you know this is not the person that you want to be working with. I think people ask that question a lot, and the answer I give is often about goosebumps. I mean, that is the test of time. If I sit there and I have the goosebumps, I know that something amazing is happening. But it's also about not being distracted. It's about totally being drawn in by what they do. And I've often tried to break that down for myself and say, what is going on here that really has me captivated? I can't do it. I can't tell you what the ingredients are. I can only say that when you are transfixed by something and listening to it and being moved by it, it's an unbelievable experience. I would cite Lang Lang as an example of that, because when I heard Lang Lang when he was very, very young, in his first performance in New York at Rockefeller University, I believe that was his first performance, and I thought, my goodness, what's going on here? There's this amazing technique, but an unbelievable risk-taking element, and the ability to cajole me and move me and fascinate me. And there's no question that this was going to be a star. Mm-hmm. So it's those indefinable things.
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
Yeah.
So how are the artists that you work with now different from the artists that you managed in the past? Is this a new generation? And how is the career path different for artists?
Well, I'll add that fortunately I'm still working with some artists that I'm not really a manager anymore, but people do call me and ask me to consult and give them advice, so I still do that. But the bulk of my time, of course, is spent with my full-time job here at the Colburn School. And, the simplest answer is that they're just starting out. And they're starting out at a more elementary level than the level at which I encountered most of my artists, because they're just starting to enter competitions. They're thinking about whether they want to be in orchestras. They're auditioning for orchestras. Most of the time when I heard somebody, either they were already in full swing with their career, or maybe I heard them at a competition like Jeffrey Kahane at the Van Cliburn competition, So we're we're putting together the building blocks, the students and myself. We're analyzing where they might fit, what really speaks to them, where their passion is, what might make them different from everybody else, and then trying to tailor-make a strategy for each and every one of them. I don't have a crystal ball, so there's no way to know that what we talk about is really the right road. But I can see on their faces whether I'm connecting. Mm-hmm. And if somebody goes, oh my God, I never thought about that before, you're absolutely right, then I know I'm on the right path. And then we go from there.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure that happens all the time.
We try.
And so speaking of this position that you have now at the Colburn School, what motivated you to leave your career in management for the most part and make this transition?
Well, I had been working at IMG Artists, I think, for 23 years when I left. And if you count on top of that the 5 years I was at Young Concert Artists, also the few years that I worked with Charles Hamlin before, you're talking about 30 years roughly in artist management. And I felt like I had accomplished everything I wanted to do. There's always more to do, but I have so many wonderful stories, successes, happy moments to think back on. But I have to also say that I didn't want to be on call to artists 24/7, because when you're a serious manager, you have to be thinking about your artists all the time, every day, and there's a lot of travel, a lot of concerts to go to. So I thought, maybe it's time for someone else to pick up now. It was a good place, a good time, and I'd like to go back to my original idealism, where I signed people that nobody ever heard of, and just see if I can put that brain to work again in a much more creative way to help young artists. So that's why I made the change.
Mm-hmm. In this day and age, do you think that it's essential for up-and-coming artists to find management in order to have successful careers?
Well, it depends on what people want to do. There are some careers that they don't need a manager for. So if they're doing a single thing, which today is pretty rare, But for people who are full-time teachers, full-time orchestra players, unless they're orchestra players aspiring to have a solo career on the side, they don't really need a manager. But it's mostly the ones that want to have a solo career or ensembles that want to have a full-time career. They're the ones who are seeking management. And I have to say, I wish the answer were different, but I have to say that having a manager or some kind of a effective personal representative at some point becomes important, because you can't play at your best and plan everything you need to plan strategically and do everything else yourself. There has to be an outside person who can help you find those opportunities and also help you negotiate for yourself, because that's not comfortable for a lot of people.
What would you recommend for young artists to position them in the best, to put themselves in the best position to find management?
Well, I think the first step, I find myself saying this really often today, but I think the first step is, who are you? What are your gifts? What is your passion? What really fascinates you? In what career path do you think you have the greatest chance of success? And then you dig down a little more deeply. So, for example, if you're a pianist, what repertoire do I think I really excel in? Do I have a real ability in contemporary music? Maybe I'll go and try to figure out how to commission some composers, or maybe just fellow students. But I think that knowing yourself is really important, because then you'll put your strongest suit forward. And artists have to realize that managers lead such a busy life and have such a full day that often they come into work every day thinking they don't need any new artists. They might need a new artist who would bring in a lot of money, but they might feel that they don't need a new artist who's just starting out, because the investment is enormous. And so I think that young artists have to convince managers that they are worthy of their attention and their efforts. And that means being interesting, being fascinating, going down a new path. The playing is essential, or the singing or the conducting, whatever it is. The basic talent and ability and technique is, we don't even have to talk about that. That's essential. But on top of that, it's being an interesting personality, such that people will want to write about you or pick up what you're writing about yourself. So very often blogs are a wonderful way for artists to make themselves known. I personally think that Jeremy Dank's career has really advanced significantly because of his brilliant blog. So just call attention to yourself, do interesting things, think out of the box, do for other people. And managers will say, yeah, I can work with this. There's a story here. I can call up a presenter and say, take this artist, because they're not only going to play a great concert for you or sing a great recital for you, but they're going to go out there into the community. They're going to move people. They're going to work with children. They're going to make an impact. And that's what, in this day and age, all of those things are important for a manager to say, yeah, I'm interested in that artist.
If an artist has a manager, what are some things they can do to get the most out of being managed?
Well, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it, because I think there are many people out there who think that once you have a manager, you're free and easy and you don't have to do anything at all. An artist-manager relationship is a partnership, and it will be as good as what you put into it. I think that managers may give the impression to artists that they really want to be left alone and not bothered, but nobody should think about that. Artists need to be in communication with their managers on a regular basis. They should make sure they have significant meetings at least twice a year, and go over what their objectives are, look at what they said they were going to try to do, both of them, and how much of it they really did, share new ideas. Managers will get really enthused and energized by hearing what an artist has to say, and they'll go and do the work that emanates most naturally from what the artist has spoken about. I think it's important for artists to be very accessible. There's nothing worse for a manager than to need to reach an artist on a cancellation where you have 3 hours to go back to the New York Philharmonic and say yes or no, my artist is available, and you can't reach that person. So that's really a problem when it happens. And I think being organized, being observant of deadlines that are given to you, being responsive and detail-oriented, all of these things are really very important, and they could make the difference between a really good relationship with a manager and a less good relationship.